It's neither Tuesday nor is it 7 o'clock or 6, depending on where you are. It's Thursday. It's 11 o'clock or 10, depending on where you are. And we're not really here to talk about beer as much as we are here to talk about the things that drive us to drink. And in this case, we decided we needed to do a special Russian discussion. It's wartime in the old parts of the world, and we're none too thrilled about it, as a lot of people are not. Apparently, if you're Trump, you're thrilled about it. But
I love his whole genius statement. He declared him independent. How smart is that?
Yeah, right.
What?
So
If
you don't have any idea what the fuck is going on, I'm Lucas. This is David. This is Brewing Controversy. Usually we talk about a few topics and review a couple of beers, but right now we're just going to drink some beer and talk about the one topic, the one elephant in the room, so to speak. I guess it would be a bear in the room in this case, and that would be Putin's war. So tonight's theme, that's the theme, and in case you missed it, we decided to put a little something special on it. So this is tonight's show, ladies and gentlemen. The micropene of Pootie Poo.
I didn't notice the Trump thing before in the background.
It's all about the details, my friend. It's all about the details.
Oh my God.
So yeah, that's the thing. So here we are, and I don't know what I can possibly do to save my dark sentiments because I just want to nuke and ash and destroy.
And
I'm coming to terms with the fact that I've been served with pansy presidents for most of my adult life. I'm having to admit to myself that I wish Obama had had some balls about Crimea. And of course, Trump was licking the balls of Putin. And now I find myself considering Biden kind of in pussy territory. I don't know. Maybe I'm unfair,
really is,
but I think he's being a wuss.
I hate to say it. I mean, listen, I'm one to always or generally support Biden and give him the benefit of a doubt because, he's not a human dumpster fire. But in this matter, listen, I get where some of his thinking is. We just got out of Afghanistan. He doesn't want to send troops into another much more deadly war. That makes perfect sense. But the problem is, if we don't fight them here right now, we're going to have to fight them in 5 years someplace else. And this time they're going to be prepared and ready for us to resist. And it's going to be a lot worse. And they are going to be, in the entire time, they are going to be sitting there prepping for how they're going to screw us. Right now, Putin does, people have been worried about all these cyber attacks. Right now, Putin isn't prepared to launch massive cyber attacks against the West. He's not prepared to do that right now. He's prepared to do that against the Ukraine, maybe against, the Baltic states, but not against everyone. If we give him 5 years, he'll think of something. We can either fight him now or we can fight him in 5 years and suffer a lot worse.
And I'm gonna say my share of boneheaded things that you're gonna be able to academically tackle, and I'm going to ask some questions because there is some stuff that I either don't remember or didn't give a shit about when it comes to certain historic lessons. Then there's some just outright anger fueled shit that I just want to say for the sake of saying it. But right now, I want to say one of those things that lots of people will get a kick out of. I miss W, because I feel like this might be one of those times when we heard that refrain of, we'll fight them here or we'll fight them there so we don't have to fight them here, and one of those Bushisms. And one of the like times when I really could use some Bush doctrine right about now, right? Like,
I don't think Cheney's animatronic mouthpiece is gonna. If we're being honest here, Cheney would probably be like, Russia's got oil, right? Are they going to give us some oil? No. How much is it going to cost to get to the oil? Oh,
right?
yeah. I don't think we need to go into this war. Press the button to make Bush speak.
So let me ask you this, because my whole life, no, not my whole life, in the 80s, we were indoctrinated to believe that everything was automatic, World War III, complete mutual destruction, no matter what.
No.
And at this point, when I talk tough about, I want to go, I we'll get into the details of why this may be wrong, but in Lucastopia, we'd have gone and faced them inside the borders of Ukraine, facing out, and helped them defend their country. And at this point right now, we would have so many warships in both seas and have run so many bombing missions. There would be so much ash to clean up. And these separatist districts would just basically be charred.
I mean,
and so, I'm not a fan of the restraint. The sanctions, I think, should have been used beforehand, and I don't think they're a response. And I think it's laughable to see my guy, up there saying we've launched sanction. No, fucker, you've pushed a button to say go. You launch goddamn missiles.
Right.
It's the language of war without war, and it pisses me off.
So, I mean, we're almost back to the League of Nations bullshit. First of all, I want to address the whole mutually assured destruction thing. That's over. That's very much over. And here's why. During the Cold War, the issue is this. And as I explained the other night on our page, it's actually a really simple formula. The Allies, including the U.S., could put 10 tank divisions on the border with the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact could put 80 tank divisions on the border. So the problem was that our automatic response to war was we have to launch nukes. Because there's no possible way, even with our slight technological edge back in the 80s, there was no possible way that we could repel 80 tank divisions with just 10. So as a consequence, if war breaks out, we have to launch nukes. The Russians knew that we had to launch nukes. So the Russian plan was to launch their nukes first, right? Which then became a game of who can launch their nukes first. That's what the situation was in the 80s. Now, the Russians do not field 80 tank divisions on the border. They can barely field 2,000 tanks, if that. They are all still of the 80s model. There have been some very minor upgrades, but all of it with basically 80s technology. All our tanks have been thoroughly upgraded. I mean, Germany's on their third version of the Leopard at this point.
Right.
We're on our fourth version of the M1 Abrams tank. It's nowhere near competitive anymore. They still technically have more tanks, but not by much. And mostly because all the rest of us have to spread our tanks around a little bit to go deal with other things.
But isn't there a possibility, like, not even the mutual destruction, but isn't there a possibility that, I mean, he's a madman, so isn't it just as possible for him to have tuned in and seen my tiny dick image as it is for him to respond out of order to border to border fighting on the ground by just pressing the button? Like, what's to stop him from deciding I launched the nukes?
He's not insane. That's the first thing you have to understand about Putin. He is not insane. He is playing a character in Russian politics that is a very traditional character. in Russian politics. And unfortunately, this is a side effect of him playing the character. Um,
Hmm.
In Russian politics, you have in Russian history, you have two modes of leaders. You have reformers, and you have uh, conquering strongmen. Those are the two modes that exist in Russian history and in Russian politics. You have conquerors like Stalin, and then you have reformers like Khrushchev, right? The reformers tend to last longer and do a lot of good. However, the conquerors last, in many cases, last a very long time because they are able to convince anyone who would challenge them, to die, because they will kill them.
Convince
Convince them to die because I will kill you. It is
What
it is a
happened to
mode of
George? I
existing.
convinced him to die.
Yes, I convinced him to die with this pistol. Uh, um, the problem is that when there is a standard course that happens in Russian history with those conquering strongmen, which is as they stay in power longer and longer and longer, they continually surround themselves with yes men who will tell them what they want to hear out of fear. Right? They don't want to be the one who ends up, in a shallow grave behind the Dhaka. Right? So.
Fair.
They will tell him what he wants to hear, and the answer is, of course, you can conquer that. You are strong, and the reality is, of course, no, you can't, because you're gonna get us in a lot of trouble.
Well, I do like that factor that the talk right now is like no matter what the asshole does at this point, he's just so fucked in the eyes of the world. Like, it doesn't matter if he gets to have his fake USSR reunion. He's fucked in the eyes of the world.
The question is how much damage he's going to do before that being fucked. One of the most telling things about what has happened is this: the oligarchs sat him down apparently and begged him not to do this, and he publicly,
Really?
oh yeah,
Why?
publicly brought them in front of
Oh.
into the Duma and basically told them, "Fuck you, I'm doing it anyway." And so, so the problem is that
is that the clip of the guy that he kept grilling and saying like, say it again, say it over again, or whatever? Like, is
no,
that
this
clip,
was
or is that
another
one of
event.
the okay.
This was another event. That he did, and basically the oligarch, and he dragged the oligarchs onto state television in this lavish setting, and basically told them, "I'm going to go do this for Russia," and at that point, you know his days are numbered, because that "fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway" like statement is basically what that oligarch is going to say when he has Putin on his knees with a pistol at the back of his head, and Putin goes, "Don't do it. Fuck you,
Well,
I'm
if
doing
you're
it anyway."
if you're out there, say hello. We got a few people lurking in the viewership. Feel free to say hi. Feel free to toss in snarky comments or questions. David knows a lot more about some of the details of the organizational and historical context, and I'm going to be bouncing a lot of that off of him tonight. You said Putin's playing a role. I'm curious, David, what role is it that he's playing when he takes this fucking photo?
It's the Russian, it's the Russian strongman. It's the Russian strongman. Look, I am literally. It is a whole thing about being a strong, virile male. I am superior. I mean, not having during the Romanov era, not having sons or children,
Right.
even by especially by your wife, but also by fuck it, they've got like 7 mistresses. None of them, so one of them has to be pregnant, right? Because you're strong, you are virile, you are proof of masculinity and strength. And that's what he's playing, right? I mean, that's the shtick that he's after. Again, if you want to look at
Are you saying, David,
Nicholas II only had daughters and one very sickly son and no bastards. So in the eyes of the Russian people, he wasn't a reformer and he wasn't that strong. So what happened to him?
Are you saying, David, that it's important for Putin to always demonstrate that he's the Dom?
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the time. No, and I have every.
I was never tired of Putin memes and images, but I definitely am not fucking holding back on them anymore tonight.
I mean,
looks like we've got Olivia's here saying hello. Yeah, the response to the annexation of Crimea was kind of tepid.
and
Hoping this situation doesn't play out the same way, though, for me means that we've got to put. We see. That's why I said the plane thing, like the airstrike thing. It really pisses me off to have come of age and lived an adult life in a country that would just never hesitate to airstrike you left and fucking right. The fact that we haven't had any airstrikes involved in this offends me almost as much as the fact that we haven't had some black ops, not exactly government organization just blow his head off.
Because our leaders are still thinking in terms of it'll cause nuclear war. The problem is,
are they, or are they just extra super nerds about fucking NATO rules?
No, they're right now. It's going to cause nuclear war. I mean, if you look at how old Biden is, I mean, if I talk to my mom, like her big concern is it going to be a nuclear war? If she talks to her brothers and sisters, is it going to be nuclear war? Anything involving Russia necessarily involves, of course, nuclear war, because that's where all our focus was, right? And the truth is, these days, no, we know for a fact that Russia isn't going to pop off all their nukes all at once. Because, and this is one of the things that I mentioned last night in my other video, I keep on referencing it back, but it's, it's important to understand there's two categories of owning nukes. There's having first strike capability and second strike capability. During the Cold War, the U.S. maybe didn't have what's called first strike capability. That meant we could nuke the hell out of Russia and make it sure that they could not respond. I say maybe not, because Russia had a pretty big ballistic missile submarine fleet, which ballistic missile submarines are submarines with a bunch of nukes on them, and they were running them through the Pacific, but most importantly the Atlantic, targeting the eastern seaboard. We did and still do. There's still a whole network of anti-submarine nets that we put under the water around Iceland when Iceland joined NATO, to screw with Russian subs to try and make sure that they couldn't get near the eastern seaboard. They still did, though. So the idea was, well, if we nuked Russia, their submarines could still hit us back. The problem is Russia's nuclear ballistic submarines, right? They got four left. They got four of them, and we know exactly where they are at every given moment, because they're the only people left with nuclear submarines, right?
So
the Chinese run diesels that we can hear. The Chileans run diesels that we can hear. Everyone else runs diesels. We're the only ones with nuclear submarines left, us and the Russians. So we know where they are. And the Russians have no plans on using those. So Russia no longer has second strike capability, which means Russia now knows we can launch right now, annihilate their ability to fire back, and there's nothing that they can do.
Well, there's like question. That. And now I just want to move on to the launch part, because I'm so over it. And so let me ask you
this.
But
again, in the minds of people like Biden, we're still there, right? We're still back in those days of, we don't know if we really have first strike capability.
Does he have, do you think, all the movie tropes, right? There's always the scene, and there's that one general where everybody else is like talking about restraint, and there's that one general that keeps grabbing the edge of the Resolute desk going, we have to go now! We have to kill them now! And like, where's that guy?
I mean, here's the irony. I'm normally the one. I'd normally be the one being like,
guy to prevail.
I'd normally be the one being like, hey, we need to be calm about this, because I mean, historically, in the U.S., that guy was a guy by the name of General LeMay. And General LeMay was nuttier than squirrel shit. we made General LeMay in charge of our nuclear response.
Oh, wait,
And-
David, it sounds like you've finally arrived at the time machine.
Right?
2 days ago, I promised that I would make David.
There's my banner. There's
for
my
his
banner.
time machine. So
But,
let's all hop in the David time machine. And
We had this guy by the name of General LeMay. In fact, most of the time when they're doing that, they're emulating General LeMay, because General LeMay literally was that guy from Dr. Strangelove who's like, it'll be fine. We can go into mine shafts and stuff. Like that. I mean, that's literally how nutty he was. And we put him in charge of the nuclear weapons. Now, there was some thinking behind this, which is if everyone else is dead, it's okay because we still have LeMay. And LeMay will kill them. That was kind of the implied threat to the Soviets of, do you see who we put in charge of our nuclear weapons? Don't fuck with us.
so while we're in the time machine, tell me the take on why there was any real delay in potentially adding Ukraine to NATO, which would have facilitated us just saying, oops, you've attacked an ally, time to go fuck you up. And then what stops like a super fast fucking addition of NATO or Ukraine to NATO, like tonight, tomorrow morning, yesterday?
So what initially stopped Ukraine from being just simply admitted was a policy called Finlandization. Coincidentally named after Finland.
Not to be confused with Naziization or whatever bullshit his propaganda keeps.
So Finlandization was this. If we, NATO, go park on the doorstep of the Soviets, of Russia proper, it's going to cause them to tweak immensely at everything. It's going to cause more problems than it's worth. So what we're going to agree to do is we're going to agree that there's going to be this sort of friendly buffer zone where neither side holds ultimate sway. And Finland was the classic example, right? Here's Finland. They aren't going to join NATO. They bought a ton of Soviet military equipment, but Finland was also a very dedicated pluralistic democracy, right? They're not going to accept being pushed around by the Russians because, again, the Russians understand if they do, Finland can say you're violating our neutrality, and you know what that means. We have to go join NATO. The idea behind that, and it seemed to work pretty well for Finland. And so the idea kind of for Ukraine was that we want to maybe keep this Finlandization process for Ukraine of, listen, Ukraine can be a pluralistic democracy, but it can still conduct trade with Russia. It's, going to be looking to the West, but it doesn't have to be an immediate threat to Russia. Putin did not accept that. He wasn't going to accept it. And I think that the Ukrainians understood that better than I think a lot of the European powers, and I think a lot of the NATO ministers understood. And as a consequence, now even Finland is looking to end Finlandization and formally join NATO, because Finland is like, no, Putin's not going to respect that idea of middle ground neutrality. You either are his subject or you're his enemy, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, again, one of my big arguments for we have to go in now, because as far as he's concerned, everyone on his border who's not his subject is his enemy.
So, by the way, hey, Will, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show. I don't think Will's gotten a chance, or at least he hasn't gotten the chance to say hi. But I don't think he's gotten a chance to tune in. We're doing this special late show thing. Occasionally, you see somebody new that you haven't seen before because you hit a better time. Glad to have you here, man. Feel free to chime in with any thoughts, gripes, critiques, and or contributions. So I'm over here looking at the map. First of all, this is where I get to toot my horn that I said it would be more than you said it would be, and so far it's more than you said it would be.
What?
This whole fucking ordeal. Like, we're on track more for Lucas's divide Ukraine down the middle at the river theory than we are David's. Oh, he just wants to work his way over to what the fuck?
No, that's not what I said. I said he wants to conquer the whole damn country.
Well, that still could be the case, and I don't think that's beyond him. Do you think that we're like, well, okay, let's finish this NATO thing. So why can't they just convene like tomorrow morning and put them in NATO and be done with it?
Well, because now NATO rules say you can't add a member who is actively involved in hostilities because it would drag.
Okay.
But the one nice thing,
let me channel my Trumpian streak and say, fuck that rule. Let's just do it anyway. What do they do to do that? I've also read a bunch of stuff that said that's not actually a rule. It's like a study or some shit.
It's not a proper rule. You're right.
Technically,
and they may, because here's the good news: is Latvia has invoked Article 4. Yay, Article 4.
Yeah, you have articles memorized and shit, which was definitely the difference between me and you. So to define that a little bit.
So Article 4 of the Atlantic Charter basically says, hey, here's how here everyone talks about Article 5, which is the mutual defense clause. If I get attacked, everyone gets attacked, right? So we're all at war with whoever just attacked me.
Mm-hmm.
Article 4 says, I'm under threat, and you all need to come and help me now, because I haven't been attacked, but I'm going to be attacked.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to talk about what we're going to do. Article 4 does give NATO a little bit of leeway into launching a preemptive strike, because even when they signed the charter, they knew that might be necessary for the alliance. If Russia's building up on the border, it may not be an option to sit. I mean, we're just going to let them continue to sit there and build up on the border and not do anything, even though we know we're about to be attacked.
Yeah.
Article 4 gives them some leeway to possibly stage a preemptive attack, which I would like to say, very honestly, would be the best possible thing we could possibly do right now.
Well, it's too late for that. That would have been the best possible thing we could have done last week. Now,
well, no, I mean, we wouldn't want to do it last week. We want to do it now. Now is better. Now it's so much better.
Now is better. They're 20 miles from Kiev.
Yeah, now it's better. Okay, so here's the deal.
By the time we're through with this, they'll be there. The time has passed for preemptive anything. It
is preemptive because Putin hasn't actually attacked a NATO member yet, right? So it is preemptive.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But I'm saying if they were to like gather up tomorrow and put Ukraine in NATO, then
yeah, that'd be fine. I mean, I think they could.
It wouldn't be preemptive.
The main thing though is this: if we attack right now, Russia's forces are completely out of position to stop us. All his best troops are stuck are stuck pointing towards Ukraine. He does not. His air force is not prepared for everyone to show up in the Baltic and start hammering St. Petersburg and Moscow from the Baltic.
But is that even necessary? It doesn't look like his population has a huge bed of support. I don't think that the homeland has to be a target. I think what he's deployed and been stupid enough to dangle. I mean, he's dangled that incrementally millimeter measured dick of his into the edge of the table. We just need to lower the machete.
I mean, but what I'm saying is, it's a basic combat principle. Why would I go to where he's strongest? If I want to beat my enemy, I go to where he's weakest.
And do what though? I mean,
if we take St. Petersburg, then his forces have to turn around and go defend the homeland. And now we get to fight on the defensive, and now they have a front in the south and a front in the north and a front on the west.
And I get that. It just seems a lot more American to go attack the army where it is instead of attack the
That's
attack
stupid.
the
That will
city.
end up with a lot of needless deaths. Go attack them where they're weak, and make them turn around and fight you.
So let me ask you this while we're talking about background, and then I've got a great question coming in from Will to throw in the mix. But uh, back to the time machine. Tell me about this fucking bullshit with the veto power, because it's appalling to me that the Security Council convened right next to the slime ball from Russia, who gets to basically veto anything they want to do. And I can't remember how it got that way. And I want to know how we
He
unfuck it.
can and he can't, because, and here's the thing that the Security Council has never invoked, but it is actually technically a rule of the Security Council, which is if the Security Council is considering a measure against a permanent member or against any member of the Security Council, they have no vote. Right?
Oh, that would work. Why is there any permanent member?
So after World War II, the idea was the 5 largest powers needed to help stabilize things in the world, and that none of them would join a supranational organization where they could be compelled by other nations to do something, right? So there had to be a loophole where they would say, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to do that, and I don't think we should do that, so I'm going to veto that." Now,
Let's trust these Russian people to be permanent members. Nothing could ever go wrong.
because they were the ones who arguably defeated the Germans, or the largest part in defeating the Germans.
Yeah.
So they get to be a permanent member. China gets to be a permanent member for helping to fight the Japanese. Um, the UK gets to be a permanent member. France gets to be a permanent member.
I mean,
And the US gets to be a permanent member.
Russia was instrumental in defeating the Germans, and Bill Cosby also made good TV. Things change.
Well, and there has been discussion in the UN, not about necessarily dissolving the veto, but about adding more permanent members, or adding expanding the size of the Security Council. There's been large argument that, given the size of their economies and their impact in stabilizing the world, even though Germany and Japan lost the war, they should be included on the Security Council. There's also a large movement that, even though India never got a chance to join the Security Council because India was still a colony of the UK at the time the Security Council was formed.
Fair point.
So there's argument that India should be given a permanent seat on the council. There's also argument that since Latin America is underrepresented, that Brazil should be given a permanent seat on the council. Now,
I would love to see the UN decide, because of all this, or after all this, oh shit, we should probably take a look at how we operate and how we're organized in a context that there are still warmongering madmen. Because I feel like they've been trying to live this high-minded fucking hippy-dippy fucking diplomatic bullshit in a world that still contains maniacs. And
the problem is
it
that
doesn't seem compatible.
They can't. It's getting all. It's at the very least getting all the members of the Security Council to agree. I mean, look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You know who had one of the only G7 country who hasn't signed that declaration? Take a guess.
It's Russia or China.
No.
What? Us?
Yeah.
I mean, how sick is it that was my next immediate easy guess?
Yeah. The only Western nation not to sign on to the International Criminal Court.
Oh, that's definitely us.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is with trying to give the UN power is part of it is half the time the US are the ones pulling the rug out from underneath their feet. Hell, we didn't even pay our dues for like 10 years at one point. I mean,
now, I want to get this question in from Will. What's China's position here? He's just curious. And I'm kind of curious too. I was tracking a little bit, and I think something that I had heard about today was that they were starting to like muscle up on Taiwan or something, taking some inspiration.
Yes and no.
It concerns me that China might be over in the corner going, yes.
Here's the problem. At least there are a couple of big differences between invading Taiwan and invading the Ukraine. First problem with invading Taiwan. there's water, a lot of it, in between Taiwan and China. China's Navy, the People Liberation Army Navy, it's confusing. The Chinese refer to all their armed forces as People's Liberation Army, and then a subtext of People's Liberation Army Air Force, People's Liberation Army Navy.
I mean,
it's
not
just
that weird.
it is a little weird. It's not the People's
used to be
Liberation
smart
Navy.
enough
Why
to
do we
do
have
that.
to add army in here? It's not an army; it's a navy. Anyway,
we used to be smart enough to have those kinds of definitions. You know, we had Air Force Space Command, and then some dipshit decided that we needed.
Apparently, I looked this up. Apparently, it is while they do have a general now, it is still structurally considered a core of the Air Force.
Yeah,
which
I
gives
did. I
me-
did learn that at some point, which is just, you know, yet more of the Trump style of taking dipshits that don't know how anything works and don't seem to be capable of looking it up and selling them a bunch of bunk.
So
So
basically,
where
we
has
just
China
repackaged
been
it.
officially? And I haven't seen.
I don't think China's happy. I don't think China's happy, and the reason China's not happy is because China. Here's the thing: the Chinese like to threaten Taiwan. They don't actually want to go conquer Taiwan. They want to make a display and show that they're strong. They don't actually ever want to. The Chinese don't ever want to go to war again. War is bad for business. If the Chinese take Taiwan, it would be bad. It would just be terrible.
You big
for Taiwan,
stupid bear! You make bad name for all of us. You
right?
go now.
China, I don't think China wants to threaten people, but come to a diplomatic solution at the end of the day. They will ignore diplomatic solutions that they don't like and then press for you to make a new one. They don't actually want to go to war with anyone. And as a consequence, if Russia, and here's the other issue that China has to look at now, if Russia strengthens NATO like it is right now, we've been kind of wishy-washy on SEATO, the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, which is South Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, right? And of course us. The Australians at this point, up until now, have basically withdrawn and basically said, no, we're not, if China invades Taiwan, we're not really going to do anything. Now the Australians are having to look around being like, well, we said that, and maybe we don't mean it so much anymore, because now it looks like, well, if the Chinese take Taiwan, are they going to come invade Australia next? Are they going to go? I mean, where is it going to stop? You say right now that taking Taiwan is all about reunifying China, but do you want to declare Australia part of China? Is that a thing that you do? I have to ask the question now, right? So from China's perspective, the West just started to find a spine of, we could really have a big problem, and we might actually have to go to war, which I think we have to right now. I think
Yeah, and so do you think there's anybody that's actually telling Uncle Joe, like, listen, Grandpa, shit's different now, and we need to go blow some shit up?
Yeah, I think that here's the thing. I doubt that anyone in the Joint Chiefs is making that recommendation right now, and there's good reason, because they would want at least 2 to 3 months to get to get everything online so that there's no problem.
Why do we spend all this fucking money if we're not going to use this shit at the drop of a hat? That's the excuse every time. We have to be ready at any time. And so here we are. It's now officially any time. So, I mean, Ukraine doesn't have another 2 hours, much less 2 months. And
no, I think they have longer than that. Because I think that the fact that the Russians didn't go in yesterday,
Well, I guess it depends on how you define yesterday, because
Well, I mean,
yesterday
they
technically
they
already
went
happened.
almost they went they did not immediately, let me rephrase that. They did not immediately follow up their very limited airstrikes with a massive ground attack.
Well, a
It
lot of
took them
people are reporting that they don't have a massive ground attack. That a lot of their bullshit is ramshackle bullshit, which actually could be a big piece of this. Like, if we don't go do something big, we're just going to fade away and rust all this shit out.
right, and I think that's part of what is going on is that the Ukrainians are playing a smart game right now, which is if they engage the Russians right now in pitched battle, in a set piece battle, they'll be chewed up. And the reason it isn't because of superior Russian equipment, it's because they don't have any planes left.
Right.
Um,
Which I can't figure that. Like, strategically, there have been some things I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how Russia was allowed to move boats toward the country at all. Couldn't we have intervened in that? I don't understand how no one parked the planes in a different fucking place in the Ukraine. Leaving
uh,
them where they stay all the time seems like a really bad choice.
well,
That's kind of
because
like having your car out for repo on a 90-day delinquency and parking it in front of your house.
right. So the reason is because it's because of airfields. What MiGs are pretty damn good, but they're not foolproof. Uh, that the only strength the MiG has really ever had over Western aircraft, of which we sent the Ukraine quite a bit, but the Ukrainians also had had a good number of MiGs. Which the MiG, for those of you who don't know, that's the standard Russian line of fighter craft.
Go watch Top Gun.
Yeah. uh, MiGs can take off
If
from
you
a lot.
if you got this far without watching Top Gun, rule number 1, shame on you. Rule number 2, go watch Top Gun.
Right.
Rule
MiGs.
number 3, it's a gay movie in case you needed that. I guess. Turns out.
So MiGs can take off from a lot of places without very well maintained airfields, but it's not a good idea. It's something that the Russians built into the system so that they could if they needed to, but they knew that there would be problems. For instance, and on every military air base that exists anywhere, uh, every basically 8 hours, you get a line of airmen across all the landing strips, and they have to walk looking down. You'll have an officer standing next to you, making sure that your head does not pop up. Your head is pointed down, and you have to look for any debris that could possibly get sucked up into the engine, because military engines are so temperamental that all it takes is a small piece of debris, because they're such high performance engines.
So they made a plane that could take off and land in basically the equivalent of a loosely plowed snowfield or a pothole-ridden, dilapidated runway,
If
but the shit on the runway might blow up into the middle of the engine.
Exactly. So that's the thing. But I mean, the same is true of. I just want to point out the same is even worse true of American aircraft. American
You go to
aircraft
Russia, you no land on runway. Runway land on you. God, they make it so easy.
I mean, but it's the truth.
It would be
So
funnier if they weren't so goddamn dangerous.
the reason military aircraft in that situation don't move is because they need a clean runway to launch.
Makes sense.
And you don't know wherever you're going whether or not that's a clean runway.
Fair enough. So before we dig back into some of the, the playing a game of Risk on our world map over here, I have been wondering about the sanctions. Will has a good question about that too. I don't feel like they do shit. I feel like we talked about it a lot. Like we talked about it. Essentially, at this point, I feel like anybody that thinks Putin wasn't prepared to weather sanctions is smoking crack, right? I get the drift that you agree with sanctions being shitty.
I mean,
sanctions are a pussy move for me because they don't really do anything. I did see a funny thing this evening on Twitter. Somebody was talking about, and I don't know if it was a news thing or if it's just made up shit, but that the the oligarchs were switching over to crypto and using crypto to something, and somebody said something about crypto being used in Ukraine to help fund the army, and my comment was, "Oh, cool! So now they can buy a useless NFT JPEG of some ammo."
Right. No, I mean it's the only sanction that would have mattered a damn, or that is going to matter a damn, is kicking them off SWIFT. Apparently, the Biden administration. This news pissed me off. It set me into a whole new universe of pissed off. I mean, there was like a wormhole, and I looked at it, and it was full of pissed off, and I looked at it, and I jumped through it, right, like swan dived, and swam around in the new universe of pissed off.
Jesus.
That
By the way,
apparently,
Colin's here. Say hi to Colin. Hey, Colin.
Hey, Colin. Apparently the Biden administration was going down a list of things they could sanction, and they said, "Oh, wait, no, we can't sanction aluminum." What? Well, it would hurt our economy. Why are you buying aluminum from the enemy? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why? Why is this even a discussion? Why is this even a discussion? And they're like, well, we can't. And apparently now we can't sanction oil because it'll just jack the price higher. I'm like, you know what? If you wanted to be ballsy, you could just go off and simply declare it a strategic asset, just like we tried to do with, of all things, face masks, right? Guess what? Price is fixed. Everyone, no one pays more than $3.50 a gallon.
Well, let's couple that with the reality that we all just came off a lot of experimentation. I mean, in previous wars, we did a lot of shit. We sent cans to the war effort, etc. Methinks if shit gets bad enough, we just convert to work at home, and then the gas is not necessarily as important.
My God. What would we do, Lucas?
Yeah, whatever.
It's not like we've ever done. I mean, we've never launched such a monumental experiment before. How would we do that?
The same thing with me in the schools. Like, why do we have snow days? Explain to me why there's ever a snow day again now that every kid has a tablet and a plan.
Right. I mean, it is stupid beyond belief. If we want to, and we need to be prepared for the fact that we're going to have to stick it to Russia, or we're going to be in World War III. If we do not fight them right now,
well, yeah,
we are going to have to fight World War III.
So let's play that risk game. In fact, I'll, because it's just pretty enough to be used, I will bring up a map that we can both fiddle with. Well, sort of both fiddle with. Let's see. Nope, I want to share just a window. There it is. Look at that shit. Now we have a map. Ta-da! So this, does it give an arrow? Yeah, it gives an arrow. This was my theory. Divide Ukraine at the halfway point at the river.
He doesn't care about that. He wants to take the whole. Why wouldn't he take the whole damn thing?
I mean, I don't know, other than not neighboring a bunch of NATO. But
he doesn't care about neighboring a bunch of NATO, because look what's immediately north of Belarus: Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, which are all NATO members. Also, Kaliningrad, which is what he. I mean, this is the problem.
What do you think? What do you think he's going to do about let's say he's successful. He's got Belarus. His hand is all the way up Belarus's ass.
Yeah, well, Lukashenko holds power only because the Russians will send in troops, just like they did in Hungary, to back him up.
So if he were to succeed in taking Ukraine, or having control of Ukraine, or installing the puppet government, whatever the fuck happens, he's got Belarus. What does he do about Latvia and Lithuania? Is that something that they just get brought into the fold? But they're NATO.
They're NATO. So he's going to invade. I mean, this is the problem. This is where I'm looking at it and saying we are setting ourselves up for a much worse World War III if we don't kick him out of the Ukraine right now.
So the inevitability might be trying to slice off Lithuania to connect Kaliningrad.
Either slice off, it depends. Either straight up slice off the southern half of Lithuania. It doesn't matter. Here's his basic problem.
What kind of boob made this deal in the first place? Like what?
It was World War II, and the Russians wanted to prove that they took a piece of Germany and held on to it.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
See, before Kaliningrad was called Kaliningrad, it was called Königsberg, and it's arguably the birthplace of the Prussian Empire, or the Kingdom of Prussia. So, as their war prize, the Russians wanted to make sure that none of their Soviet satellite states, none of the Warsaw members, none of them got that. The Russians got what used to be like the birthplace of Prussia as their war prize, as their ultimate war prize from World War II. And when the Soviet Union dissolved, none of the other satellite republics, not Latvia, Lithuania, or Estonia, and not Belarus and not Poland, could lay claim to Kaliningrad.
Andrew points out if he goes for Poland, it's go time. Well, yeah, that is the worst case current scenario, I think.
He's not going to go into Poland. He's going to go straight into Latvia, Lithuania, or Estonia. Why? Because neither, at least in terms of NATO members, none of the Baltic states between them have a single fighter aircraft. They don't have a single tank. They have armored vehicles and transport helicopters. That's it. That's the entirety of their armed forces.
I am, when I look at the blame spread on this, I gotta ding my boy Obama. This should have been a fucking thing. This shit right here should have been a thing. The Crimean,
and I let me speak to that real fast because
handover.
I want to. There's a reason why I feel Obama didn't. I don't think it was correct, but I can understand the logic, which was this: the Russians made a point of sticking a bunch of stuff in the Crimean Peninsula. Why? First of all, they fought a war there and they lost, and that kind of peeved them. In the 1850s, the Crimean War. Number two, the Russians made a point of putting a big naval base there. So there were a lot of Russians there. And after the Soviet Union broke up and Ukraine declared independence, Ukraine said, okay, instead of making this a whole thing where you get upset because we kick out your naval base, what we'll do is we'll say, hey, we will lease you the base. And we'll still allow Russians to come in and come to the base. It'll be fine. We don't have to change anything. Everyone can be copacetic. We don't have to have a meltdown about this. Not like fucking Chernobyl, you dicks. So, there was a reason why it was semi-understandable about the Russians wanting Crimea. And from a certain point of view, you could look at that and say, okay, the Russians will leave Ukraine alone if they can just have Crimea, because that's where the naval base is. There's.
I mean, I guess I can understand.
There's a logic. It's not good logic, but there's a logic.
To me, it was just a test. It's like, we see what happens if we poke USA Bear. We poke USA Bear, nothing come out. We poke USA Bear again. We steal elections in USA Bear. We foster chaos and ignorance in USA Bear. Nothing come out. USA president suck dick. Okay, we take Ukraine. Like
right.
and
you're not wrong.
Obama pussied on the peninsula. Trump, just polished.
Putin's
taint. Polished Putin's taint with his grandmama's tongue, and so Putin is an emboldened as fuck. And now you've got these dickholes like McConnell trying to say that it's because Biden pulled out of Afghanistan that Putin
What the
felt
fuck?
emboldened for this. No, fuck you. It was all these missteps. One of our guys and your guy, big missteps, showing that no one in America would give a fuck, and not half, 30% of our population would forget that you are one of the world's enemies.
I mean, hell, there's an entire major Norwegian television show all about the U.S. under Trump not honoring the alliance. It's called Occupation. If you've never seen it, it's really cool. It's really amazing. It's about Norway being invaded by Russia and like them resisting and kind of winning. It's really cool.
Andrew points out Putin's doing this to gauge Western response, and yes, that's a pretty common.
Yeah, and the problem is Biden needs to strap on his big boy pants, go into Brussels. I want to point out, in honor of Brussels, I am drinking a Belgian sour right now.
That's right. Let me take this map out of the stream and bump you up so you can show that off.
My Belgian sour.
There you go. Who is that? Rodenbach.
Rodenbach Classic Belgian Sour Ale, barrel aged.
I already mowed through it, but I decided to hit the hard stuff: Imperial Stout, Bourbon Barrel, Odd Sides, Double Ochre, which is a go-to of mine on this broadcast for when I might as well be drinking straight out of the liquor bottle. And I did not bring a backup because I don't want to have a hangover. But I really wish that I had a Russian Imperial Stout tonight, just for the humor.
I am too. Just mine's with tobacco.
Well, I choose to think of this as, the double ochre is what Biden needs to bring to the equation. He needs to bring two big sticks and start pounding. And, he needs to get his hacksaw Jim Duggan on, and he needs to come out and pound.
I mean,
I would like to think someone is telling him this. I would like to think, like, I don't know if Kamala is, but I would like to think someone is saying, "Come on, man!" Like shit. He should have never said, "I will never put U.S. troops in Ukraine." I do wonder if that's a bluff. I wonder if that's his version of Putin with, "Oh no, we're not staging invasion. We just parking tanks." Like, everybody fucking knew what you were doing.
His other option to putting U.S. troops into Ukraine, if he wanted to help out the Ukrainians right now, is he could close the airspace.
Oh,
he could close the airspace and give the Ukrainians a fighting chance and make life that much harder for the Russians.
But isn't it fair to say that the way that we're kind of precipitously building up forces in the NATO space gives us the ability for him to just come out one day and go, "Change my mind," and send them in?
I mean, I would say that right now, if he closed the airspace, then the Russians are in for a very, very bad day.
You think so?
Now, and the Russians will bitch to high heaven.
You think they can't get it done on the ground?
Can they? Yes. Do they want to? No.
Closing the airspace would mean that we would have to have air in a complete encircling air superiority, right?
Well, we don't have to encircle, but we have more than enough there between the NATO members. There are more than enough aircraft to cover the
airspace is closed, and NATO aircraft have to fly above a non-NATO country to enforce the closure of the airspace. How does that land in the not going into Ukraine?
It's a gray area. It's like the quarantine that we did for Cuba, right? A blockade is an act of war. A quarantine is something else.
That's fair. Well, that's what we need, just a real good variant of COVID. Now it's... I like the close the airspace idea.
I have to say that's another thing that the Russians won't want to do to escalate, because they don't have enough aircraft to engage us regularly over Ukrainian airspace. So if we closed off Ukrainian airspace, now I would argue we need to go ahead and send in the troops. I would argue.
I mean, I'm all for the whole thing. Full court press.
One MEU needs to show up in the Crimea with a bad attitude. For those of you who don't know, 1 MEU is the 1st Marine Expeditionary Unit. needs to show up in Crimea with a bad attitude and explain to the Russians what it's going to be like from now on. I would argue, however, that the most minimal use of force that we could do that might be acceptable to Biden is to close the airspace.
It looks like General Milley has met with allies. I gotta believe that Milley is one of those that wants to go fuck somebody up.
Oh yeah, yeah. Millie definitely wants to go get his dick wet.
This is like the other day we were texting Tuesday before the show, and I forgot to say this on the show on Tuesday because this just makes me so happy, but in a dark way. Like, I'm not happy about any of this, but I got to find humor. Wolf Blitzer comes on the air, and like, this is Viagra for Wolf Blitzer. Like, Wolf Blitzer's entire journalistic life is built around Gulf War crisis style. Like, his show, The Situation Room, has been misnamed for a long time because it just it isn't relevant. And now all of a sudden it is. And as soon as Wolf Blitzer came on the air, he had like a brand new spring in his step. He was big and shit, man. He was so happy. Like, this is Wolf Blitzer and this is The Situation Room. Fuck yeah.
I want to respond to Andrew's comment real fast about all this can lead to nukes. You might want to refer to earlier in our broadcast, also to some stuff that I said on my solo on our page last night. It's unlikely that we're going to trade nukes. It's really unlikely. I'm going to be honest. If Putin does reach for, at most, and he's made comments to this effect of reaching for his small scale tactical nukes, not his big strategic jobs that level cities, but stuff that, wipes out a division or softens up a battalion. If he does that, I have to imagine that maybe not the commanders that he's put right next to him, but you're definitely looking at, I would argue, a coup attempt at that point, because I definitely think that the Russian soldiery and the Russian officer corps is going to look at that and be like, holy fucking shit. We nearly made it 100 fucking years without having this fucking problem. And you're about to get us all fucking wiped out because we can't beat American nukes. We know we can't beat American nukes. We're not under any fucking delusion about, we're going to like suddenly launch a nuke from space. No, the Americans blew all that shit up. They got rid of it. We told them about it and they made us take it apart.
Basically surrounding Kiev right now. Do you think that they're working their way? Well, I don't imagine that the president is there. But do you think they're working their way around to a you leave now or we start blowing up a bunch more shit?
No, I think their goal is to put a Russian puppet regime in Ukraine.
Right, but do you think the Ukrainian president's prepared to?
No, I don't think Zelensky will do it. I think
die for country, or he's just going to split.
I don't think Zelensky will surrender. I think Zelensky will say, I'm the rightful president. You have invaded our country. We are at war, and I will form a government in exile. And again, which would lead to the Russians trying to invade NATO to end his government in exile.
Will asked, don't we all lose if there's a nuke? I think it depends on the size and location of said nuke.
We don't. Yeah, I mean, if Russia goes tactical, which is what Putin has threatened, then no, we don't lose, because the thing is, we just escalate with our own tactical nukes against them. Again, Russia has to know that our game plan is retaliation if they use tactical nukes.
So don't you think that, like, because I had this weird fantasy of like, hey, we could just go like super hardcore cyber attack on them, but I just have a feeling that sanctions and cyber attacks are all things that he's already contemplated.
No. He's not. He hasn't contemplated us hitting him back with cyber attacks. I can guarantee you, in his hubris, he has not thought about. In his hubris, in his
like
idea,
the right kind of cyber warfare could render his whole country fucking useless.
Yeah,
like I've been saying all week,
which we should go do. We should
go
do
take their
right
internet
now.
Back to 1994.
Yeah, it's going to take a while, because here's the thing. Right now, the Ukrainians are doing the smart thing right now, Andrew. they are not engaging the Russian forces in direct set piece battles, even though they have enough troops that they could. Uh, the reason is because they don't have any more planes left. So if they come out of hiding to try and engage the Russians directly, they're going to get bombed to shit. So what they have to do is they have to lie doggo, basically let the enemy pass and launch ambushes as they do. Put Russian forces in situations in which they don't get to use close air support before they're overwhelmed. So you pick your time and place of battle, right? So if the Russians coming down here and I've got forces on both sides, and they wait until the major part of the Russian force that would be hard for me to kill passes. Then you spring the trap, overwhelm the enemy, and then withdraw as quickly as possible. That way, you don't give the Russians enough time to start using their artillery or aircraft to engage you. That's what the Viet Cong did. That's what the Taliban kind of did. If they were smart about it, which generally they weren't, they just were persistent. Uh, but yeah, I mean that's what the Ukrainians are doing right now. That's why in Ukraine, that's why Kyiv is encircled, because there's no hope without air support. And this is why I'm saying close the airspace. If we close the airspace, then the Ukrainian army can engage in set piece battle, or have a hope of engaging in set piece battle with the Russian armed forces.
I did see a lot of buzz this evening. I was just doom scrolling Twitter. You know, when you're in Facebook jail, you got to do what you can. And I saw a lot of discussion of like, why the fuck didn't we stock them up good and plenty with arms in advance? Like, why isn't the Ukraine army just swimming in American supplies, ammo, weaponry?
I have an answer, because this guy withheld it in exchange for them trying to implicate Biden in shit.
Mm,
In fact, we tried to impeach that particular motherfucker.
But there's been some time since then, and I think it's adequate to say that in the previous month to yesterday, we should have probably made damn sure that they were armed to the teeth better.
The thing is that takes time, and then what are you giving them that's going to be useful? That is the next question. If I give them a bunch of NATO weapons, right? Yeah, you know what? Actually, no one sells to both sides. Actually, the Russians buy from one group, we buy from an entirely different one, and they don't, because I have to say, this idea of people sell weapons to both sides.
Well, it depends on who the people are.
Well, militaries have very exacting specifications on what their equipment has to do. And there's a good reason for that, is because it has to work that way every single time in very adverse conditions. So the idea of, oh, I make bows and arrows for both sides no longer applies. NATO ammunition does not work in an AK-47. AK-47 ammunition does not work in a NATO weapon. NATO made a whole big deal about all our rifles. If you're a NATO member, your rifle has to fire only one type of ammunition. That way, we all have giant stockpiles of bullets that we can all share between all our rifles. Right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So
I just encountered a funny American Petroleum Institute CEO Mike Summers insisted on Thursday that U.S. oil companies would not seek to capitalize on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Like, who the fuck believes that? Our companies would never take advantage of this kind of situation. Oh, you mean like the last 40 fucking years, you fucking cunts?
Yeah, no, it's going to be bad.
Apparently, Biden said American oil and gas companies should not exploit this moment to hike their prices and raise profits. I mean, they've done that every fucking time. No one should believe them ever.
I mean,
I got gas today just because I was running low, and I almost paid $4 a gallon. Now I'm running, sports sedan with premium, but still, fuck, it's gonna be a thing, and we just need to be ready for that.
And we don't have to be. Like you said, we could just simply say, hey, everyone needs to work from home.
Well, yeah, but in some respect, people are going to buy gas, and they just need to be ready for what it costs, and
Right. I mean,
we need to back up the effort.
imagine what
But
we
good
could do.
luck getting this country full of fucking dipshits to back up a war effort. I mean, we can't even back up a goddamn pandemic effort. There's one of the most embarrassing things about COVID was that the solidarity of getting together and conquering a challenge as a nation that we enjoyed and considered part of our core values from all these other wars fell apart. So I don't think there's any way that anybody. I mean, you've got fucking Candace Owens trying to say this whole thing is just about Hunter Biden, which is one of the most ludicrous fucking.
No, well, I mean, it's a whole thing. I don't even want to go into that fucking Q conspiracy bullshit. I can't. I would literally lose my shit. I would have to go down. I would have to go down to my liquor cabinet and drink myself to fucking death. That's the only possible response to having to contemplate that level of bullshit. Uh, uh, no, I would too. I would just seriously just go down. Anyway, moving on.
So,
Yeah, I think that in answer to your question of why we didn't just drop a bunch of stuff on them is because we had to find stuff that was going to be useful for them. We got bunker busters. We got basically jacked up bazookas for them that are man portable. I could give it to a guy. I could give him a couple of rounds of ammunition, and he could run through the fucking woods and snipe at some fucking Russians with it with a big boomstick. We gave them javelins, which again, man portable. You don't have to be in a set piece battle. You can sort of slide around. And that's one of the things. Like people were expecting, like the Ukrainian military to like mass their javelins and engage the advancing Russian tanks. No, the Ukrainian military was never intending to like mass their forces and launch javelins at Russian tanks. No, they had you take a fire team with 2 javelin missiles and a javelin launcher, and you go snipe a fucking tank. And then you run the fuck away.
that's yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I really, I hope.
you hand them just to finish. Like you hand them medical supplies, you hand them mobile surgical kits. You hopefully find whatever AK variations you have lying around. You give them those to them so that if they kill a Russian, they can pick up the ammo and slap that into that bad boy and still keep on fighting. You give them body armor to improve their survivability. You give them. This was one of the coolest things that we ever did during the Cold War. So, if you don't know what Solidarity is, Solidarity was the large Polish union that basically led to Poland throwing off the Soviet Union. The Solidarity strikes broke the power of the Soviet Union in Poland. And the Soviet Union was doing everything they could to stop Solidarity. And there's a legend. No one's been able to confirm it, but there's a legend that one of the leaders of Solidarity gets a call one night. And he said the only reason he did what the guy asked is because he spoke Polish with such a horrible accent. He's like, not even the Russians would be this bad at this. And a guy meets him at a street corner with a suitcase, hands him the suitcase, and just walks away. Inside the suitcase, 50 dial-up modems, which the Russians had no idea how to stop that sort of communication at the time, right? In the 1980s. So there were 50 dial-up modems for Solidarity to use to communicate in a way that the Polish Secret Service and the Russian KGB and the Russian military couldn't track. So I imagine we've done much the same thing for the Ukrainians. We've given them communications equipment so that they can continue to fight. Andrew, yes, they probably do need drones, except for the fact that drones need fuel.
There is that. I found myself this morning making coffee, thinking about Biden's limp dick response, and I came to the conclusion that even as a loyal liberal, I feel like he can't be president again. This ordeal, no matter how good it comes out, the mistake of not having the sack to confront this, I think sabotages him if he chooses to go for a second
No,
term.
he's going for a second term.
I think this is a
he
massive
deserved it now.
weakness. I think this is a huge weakness.
No, I mean, here's the thing. Biden thinks he deserves a second term at this point.
And Andrew, we're all tired of war, but
I will.
I don't know. How do you eliminate it? You got to eliminate a lot of other human shit that sucks. And Will's heading out. Thanks for joining us, Will. Good to see you. Yeah, I don't know. It's not about the war. It's about the other shit, right? So Olivia points out it's been something somewhere my entire 32. Yeah. Everybody's whole life. And I am a firm believer. Like, I have a few basic tenets. Some of them are unpopular. Some of them are just meh because nobody cares about thinking. But I wholeheartedly believe that most of human behavior comes down to greed and fucking. That's it. Greed and fucking. And the fucking part is always the part where people like to argue and get pissy because I start talking about instinctual, hardwired shit that nobody wants to hear about in a woke context. But the greed part, you can see that every fucking where. And basically everything that we're usually dealing with in war is the greed. I mean, it's very sometimes religion, but religion's just about power, which is ultimately a form of greed. So it's still the same fucking thing. So, I think it's not about eliminating war. It's about how in the world can we change the human animal? And that's a giant order, right? I mean, how do you change the human animal? I don't know. I mean, we're shitty, greedy, self-deprecating, do what feels right in the moment for the immediate greed, never mind the consequences. And then there's the fact that we unnecessarily compete with each other because of fucking, but that's a different subject altogether. Except when you're coming to, Putin's tiny dick. Yeah, I don't know. You can't just say no more war. The hippies tried that, didn't work. I don't think they were prepared to deal with the fact that it has drivers. I think you can maybe kind of have more hope of pushing religion out of the equation quicker than greed. You can make decent passes at laws that keep secularism front and center quicker than you can making rich assholes stop trying to hoard wealth they're never going to use, etc. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. You're right, Andrew. There are people all over the world who don't want war. That's very true. I don't know if those people overlap with the people that don't want to be broke.
Well, I mean, it's not just about, I got into an argument slightly with some guy trying to argue that, war is just simply a plutocratic plot earlier today. I mean, if it was a plutocratic plot, then Putin wouldn't be doing this, right?
I mean, there's a lot of ignorant cynics, and that's an ignorant cynic thing to say. I mean, I guess, I could be criticized just the same because a lot of times I can look at almost any fucking thing and tell you which of my two columns it falls in. But greed and fucking, like 90% of the time when there's a workplace problem of somebody, some ego issue, some boss that's out of control, fucking, they can't get what they need to validate themselves through fucking. So they're fucking you.
I'm gonna hold my tongue right now.
Yeah, I know, you kind of have to. You have that environment. And like I pointed out, I think while you were taking your break, I pointed out that religion is the other, that could be the third column, but I view religion as part of greed because religion is just a wing of power and power is a wing of greed.
I can see that. I can definitely see that. I mean, I would argue about the whole power thing, but misused, yes. religion does become about
Well,
power.
then we get into me nitpicking the difference between faith and religion. Faith, I don't think, is about power. Religion is.
Possibly true. Possibly true. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're just in a situation where, yeah, the Russians are going to take Kyiv, and they've already, they're going to take the entirety of the Ukraine. Whether or not they can hold it, whether or not they can do anything about it, is up for debate. I think that it would behoove us at this point, hopefully, while the Russians are still in the Ukraine, to launch our own offensive, either to close the airspace, make it a living nightmare for the Russians to try and stop those elements of the Ukrainian army that have gone into the bush and are prepared with the weapons that we sent them to make the Russians' lives a living hell, or we launch our own offensive. I mean, here's the deal: when even Sweden is showing up at the NATO meeting,
yeah,
Sweden is very much on the fence about whether or not they now want to join NATO. Sweden,
yeah.
We're always neutral. They're like, nope. We're not ready to become a Russian satellite state. We're not going to do that.
What's the real difference, aside from the fact that Biden shoved his foot all the way down his mouth? What's the real difference in I won't send troops into Ukraine and taking St. Petersburg, like you theorized earlier? Like, those are the same, right?
No,
With
I
the
would argue
exception-
those are entirely different because I'll be honest. If the first MEU showed up in the Baltic in the next 2 weeks and took St. Petersburg, they would not face heavy resistance.
No, I'm talking about from a legalities and turf and NATO standpoint, like invading Russia.
So Article
Or
4,
fighting Russia in Ukraine would be the same with regard to NATO, but the
No.
difference is
no,
that
they would not be the same. They'd
he
not be
won't
the same.
go into Ukraine. He didn't say he won't go into Russia. So that's
Right.
kind of a loophole.
He could, yeah, he could send the first Marine Expeditionary Unit straight into St. Petersburg. And I got to be honest, I would love for him to do that because, again, what it would force the Russians to do is take all the forces that they have in the Ukraine and spin them 180 degrees back north. And now they have a problem.
What
There's
would be the aside from just shrewd military strategy, which I'm all for. I think that's great. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But what would be the other leg that Biden could stand on in telling the American people? Because you can't tell a lot of average dipshits, okay, so here's the thing. So they're over here. We're going to go over here. We're going to force them to go over here. Like, people don't really get military strategy if they've
No.
never bothered to study anything. But what could you tell the American people in that case was the rationale for applying pressure to Ukraine?
What do you
Or
mean?
not Ukraine, to St. Petersburg.
To taking St. Petersburg? Basically, here's the deal. Russia's proven that it's not going to be content to live next door to its neighbors. We have alliance obligations to Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Poland. We have promised to defend them. The Russians have made clear through their actions that they will eventually seek to invade our ally, the members of our alliance. Latvia explicitly has called for aid with the threat of they fear a Russian invasion. We believe that threat, that fear, is well founded and justified, and that the Russians will try to invade the alliance, and that it is better that we attack now and defeat the Russians on our terms than to have to do this in 5 years when the Russians have done to the Baltic states exactly what they've done to Ukraine, because that's what they'll do. If you go down on the map.
Well, before I do that, is there an argument to be made that St. Petersburg needed to be seized to cut off something? Because you got the sea, you've got this thin peninsula. Like, could that
St.
be?
Petersburg would cut off Kaliningrad immediately. That's part of why we know that the next Russian target is the Baltic states.
Right.
Where
are we going?
Because here's the deal. Go south from Crimea.
Oh, you're looking at Istanbul?
What's the thing that you can't that prevents the Russians from using anything that they do in the Ukraine on the sea? It's that little ass fucking strait called the Bosporus. And I can guarantee you, the Turks have that thing set to fucking kill everything that fucking tries to pass through it. And if the Turks don't want you to pass through the Bosporus, you're not passing through the Bosporus. Not even the fucking United States Navy would dare try and take the Bosporus. I don't care who you are.
What about
one's
over
trying to-
here?
The terrain.
No, I mean like getting through here.
You mean
is
the
that just
Hellespont? That's called the Hellespont. Is
Is
what
it-
that is.
open, or does it get controlled?
So the Hellespont, the issue with the Hellespont is this: the terrain doesn't allow for you to really make a big stand there. It is defended; it's just not as heavily defended. But the Bosporus is defended. So the Hellespont, it's there's nothing to cover you.
Mhm.
Like the Bosporus at least has the what's called the Golden Horn, which is basically a giant fucking fortress in the middle of the fucking strait.
Do you think, let's say, obviously the timeline is in his favor. He's going to get control of Ukraine, and maybe government in exile is an option, but has the ship already sailed, or is there a retake Ukraine option that comes later? If Biden
Here's the thing:
finds it
why
nuts,
would I go do that? If I'm a smart military strategist,
which
why
Biden
would I go
clearly is
try and
not.
retake the Ukraine? Because the problem is that if he wants to go break out of Ukraine, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 NATO members in front of him, right? All of which are far better equipped. He has to coordinate an offensive across a much wider front, right? Against a much better defended enemy, a much better equipped, a much better led, and a much better dug in enemy along that border, right? So why would I try and continue my offensive that way? If the US, if you go up, flips the script and takes St. Petersburg, he has to move his forces all the way back north, disorganized. He's going to be rushing them as quickly as he can back north as quickly as he can, and we can engage them what's called piecemeal, right? It's the classic Napoleonic strategy of what's called divide and conquer, right? You march divided, you fight united. That was one of Napoleon's classic maxims, and it's something that is held true, right? So the Russian army would have to march divided all the way back to St. Petersburg, and in a modern warfare setting, if you march divided, then you fight divided. If you can't,
But I'm talking about 2 weeks from now when Putin has secured Ukraine.
yeah,
Is there not, even if a St. Petersburg thing was a thing, wouldn't retaking Ukraine be the effort? Like if
Why?
Biden were to change his mind, which he should do already.
why would I have to retake Ukraine? The military, if I attack St. Petersburg, then the military forces that are in St. Petersburg are going to leave. Pardon me. Military forces that are in the Ukraine are going to leave the Ukraine as quickly as possible. Right?
How do you
That's the
make
whole idea.
anything? How long does it take to get a fleet into this fucker?
We already have a fleet there.
Is it big enough to fuck everybody up?
Oh yeah.
Well, that's a thing.
And we have the forces. We have enough air forces in Germany, and we have the Berlin Brigade that we can send right now.
So Andrew's asking, if we're just assuming World War III is going to happen because invading Russia will definitely.
Yeah, well, I
start it.
mean, Russia invading NATO is going to cause it anyway. I mean,
But
the thing
I
is,
don't-
Russia's already said they're going to invade NATO.
I don't
It's
think
just a matter of when.
I don't think the World War III that we grew up with movies about
No.
comes to fruition because of the nuke thing. And I know that this is a privileged Midwestern thing to say, but I'm looking around and going, I don't live in New York.
Well, that's the problem. The Russians aren't going to nuke New York. They can't nuke New York anymore, not effectively, not unless they hit the big button, which they're not going to do. None of the Russian military forces are going to stand around. No, it's not going to be Cold War II either, because we're not going to put up with this bullshit. Because the Russians never invaded fucking Europe during the Cold War.
Yeah, this is pushing a button. I mean, if anything, this ends up with some kind of conflict name, or if it ends up a war, it ends up with a very much more Korean War style regard.
No, I mean, I think if we were to take St. Petersburg, if we were to threaten Moscow, the Russians would very quickly back away from the fucking table and call it a fucking day. They'd leave Crimea, they'd leave Ukraine, and they'd be like, no, it's not fucking worth it. It's not fucking worth it. And Andrew, like I said earlier about my thoughts on China, the issue is the Chinese don't want a war. The Chinese are more than happy to fucking threaten Taiwan all day long, but they don't actually want to try and invade Taiwan because, again, there's a big difference between Ukraine and Taiwan, which is there's a shit ton of water. The Chinese have a shitty navy, and the Taiwanese have basically turned the western-facing coast of their island into one giant anti-aircraft battery that will fuck their shit up.
I wonder if Jimmy Carter can reach Uncle Joe.
You think Carter wants war? Really?
Well, he says Russia's unprovoked attack of Ukraine using military and cyber weapons violates international law and the fundamental human rights of the Ukrainian people. I condemn this unjust assault on the sovereignty of Ukraine that threatens security in Europe and the entire world. And I call on President Putin to halt all military action and restore peace. Now, Putin doesn't give a shit what he says.
No. You know
I
what it
just
is?
can't, like he says, we must stand with Ukraine and support their rights and peace. You can't stand with Ukraine if you're not willing to go into Ukraine.
I'm going to go dark like this. I will go dark like this. You know why Biden is pulling his punches? I fucking hate these words are coming out of my mouth. Because Bo.
Oh.
Yeah. You gotta know it's true.
So?
You gotta know it's true. He is gun shy about sending the troops into battle because his son was a soldier and he didn't get the proper care, and then he died of a non-combat related injury, fucking brain cancer. But he does have a point of, well, it probably would have been better diagnosed if he'd been back in the U.S., not off in the fucking sandbox shooting at Afghans.
I hope not. Oh my God! He just
you know it is
nuts. He needs to find his nuts.
You know it is. You know it's because of Bo. Now that I said it, you know it's true. You know it's true.
Livy points out Russia's not going to be swimming in allies anytime soon.
No,
damn
I mean,
true.
not even the Chinese are going to back this bullshit.
And Andrew was just asking about that. And China, you nailed it, Andrew. China likes money, and war isn't good for money. Unless you're Bush.
There's oil involved.
Maybe the POTUS club can get together and have a little conference call intervention and be like, look, Joe.
What, you think Obama's going to argue for war? No offense. I
don't know, man.
He's not.
Maybe in retrospect he sees the mistake. I don't know.
He doesn't. I
haven't made it that far in the new book.
Listen, if we're all being honest, Obama likes the smell of his own fucking farts, and he thinks they smell like roses. We all fucking know this. Listen, let's not pretend like Obama is some sort of liberal hero or people's hero. He's not. Is it great that we had the first African American president? Yes, it is. On the other hand,
right,
would we have done better with someone who actually wanted to have the job other than be a mascot?
Yeah, that's fair.
And at the end of the day, because half of Obama's actions were entirely based around, I don't want to be a mascot. But then you act like a mascot.
Yeah, that's a reasonable critique.
Andrew
points out, is it possible Biden? Yeah, does he know something that we don't know?
The Russians are a paper tiger. They don't have a functioning military. They are,
But you know,
literally-
like something else.
One of the stories that I remember when the Russians invaded that tiny ass little fucking country of Georgia is the Georgians figured out real quick that the few Ma Deuces that they had. If you don't know what a Ma Deuce is, it's this old piece of World War II steel that fires 50 caliber rounds. It's a 50. If you see in like World War II movies where they've got like both hands on the machine gun and they're going, that's a Ma Deuce, an MA2. Now, if you fire a Ma Deuce at a Humvee, you're just going to make them angry. If you fire a Ma Deuce at a Striker or an M1 Abrams tank or anything else that we own, a fucking Bradley, they're going to laugh and they might not even kill you for just being so silly. If you fire a Ma Deuce at a BT-2, which is the standard Russian infantry carrier, it looks like it has really thick steel plates. It's really cool. You want to know what happens? You start making really big holes in the side of that motherfucker. And the Georgians were like, literally, we were just fucking desperate and we just thought we'd try this. Holy shit, it fucking worked. They started making holy hell for the Russians. The part of the reason why the Russian army had to withdraw was because the Georgians figured out, I have 50 caliber weapons and they go through Russian armor. This is so fucking cool. I love this fucking idea. And the Russians were not prepared for it. They were not prepared for the Georgians to be like, we live in the Caucasus. Have you seen what our shepherd dogs look like? They're little, they are fur tanks. We bred a race of fur tanks.
God damn.
Because we hate literally everything. Existence itself offends us, and we would like to destroy it. But in the meantime, we're stuck in these fucking mountains with these fucking dogs, and apparently you want to join us. And that disturbs us.
Well, I think it's about time to retreat to watching endless footage of the doom and the gloom. But it was really fun to chat with some folks, especially folks that can't make our primetime time.
Right? Y'all should watch.
This has been a
subscribe,
special
do that
late
shit.
show of Brewing Controversy, Pootie Chooses War special. So thanks for tuning in for this. And man, I hope I tempt the Facebook moderator gods with this shit. Because if this doesn't get their Putin licking ass, nothing will. By the way, next week we'll probably be diving into that. We've got a guest coming that's got some opinions on Facebook's filtering. A couple of guests.
I have some required reading for anyone who wants to tune in on Tuesday. Please go watch the Netflix documentary Downfall about Boeing because I'm going to be talking about that.
Okay, I'll try to make time for that
because oh my god, I again the wormhole of pissed off, the whole swimming around in the universe of pissed off.
All right, y'all. It's been fun. David, thank you for doing the late show with me. If you guys didn't see it last night, David was on the Facebook side of the universe doing a little live. Just
Lucas doesn't let me post stuff to YouTube.
A little live ad hoc. Well,
I don't get to play with the big boy toys.
We're trying to make sure that we don't end up with too many random pieces of content. So we're trying to figure out how to brand these like one-offs, and we haven't mastered it all yet because it's literally not our job.
Excuses.
It's the marketing guy in me. Everything has to have a purpose. Hey, folks, thanks again. Good night, good evening,
and good luck.
Good luck.